Exorcism and self-healing is well underway when you are living from a constant, abiding attitude toward the world, a certain specific viewpoint toward what you see out there and seeing others live in a certain way. That attitude, that very spiritual statement is, you have nothing for me. I don't want anything that you presently have. When that becomes an abiding attitude and you live from that, you also act without having to think about it from that. Then see if you can ever fall for the temptations from anything out there. There'd be no game, no contest. You used to lose all the time, didn't you? Oh, maybe now you still lose. The game has turned around, the contest has turned around in another direction, in which even now there is no battle because you know it has been won and you're a part of the victory that's already been won. Evil human beings, devil men, human beings possessed of evil spirits have one great overwhelming terror. Devil-possessed men, devil-possessed women fear above all exposure. That's the one thing they guard against with great fierce fighting. That's where they're completely sly. And they know that one of their best weapons to keep gullible humans from seeing through them is to attack. It is so easy to throw a human being into emotional confusion, to plant self-doubt. And all devils possessing human beings know that. Therefore, it is up to you to expose what they know and practice. Right now, we are going to expose the tricks that demon-possessed human beings use. And when I say a demon-possessed human being, I mean any human being who doesn't love truth. Anyone. You see, remember I told you, don't think of extreme cases, think of everybody. The rule is, have you forgotten it? If so, I'll remind you of it right now. You were either on the side of God or you were on the side of Satan, and that is absolutely it. If you're not developing spiritually, you're developing into more degeneracy. One way or the other. Now, do you really think that those people out there are interested in changing themselves inwardly? I'm looking around the room. Where are they? No, they're out playing their unconscious games, trying to bring others into their camp so that they will feel the elation of defeat, which they call victory. They see, when one devil is able to bring a human being into his camp, he gets elation, which is horrible pain, which we'll get into a little bit. Fact one. Human devils, which is everyone who is not on the side of God, can be predicted 100%. You can be a spiritual prophet of exactly what they're going to do, and you will never make a mistake. A good mechanic always knows what a car is going to do. Starting it up, you start it up, he knows the motor is going to turn over. You do another thing and that starts rolling left or right. If something goes wrong, he knows what's going wrong. He knows all about the mechanical parts of that automobile. A demon-possessed human being is 100% mechanical, no consciousness. He always does the same thing. He is incapable of doing anything outside of his very low state. He is fixed in the habits of hell. That is what you need to know. That is what you must explore. So that when you see 4 billion people with their various tricks trying to tempt you, beguile you, there's just one thing happening inside of you, which is recognition. You know what he's trying to do because you have studied and you've observed and you see how cleverly everyone lies, how skilled they are in saying what they know you want to hear. Now, summarize, and then we'll go on after the summary. Every evil person can be predicted. His actions, his words can be predicted. And they will always include trying to draw you into their net to harm you. The rule is, a devil gives what he is. What he is the elements of hell, and that's what he gives you while labeling them something else. You, in order to be a true prophet of what they're going to do, you must not have the weakness in you in which you want someone to care for you. You want human love. That is exactly where they're going to slip one over on you. He's predictable. That's one of his weaknesses. The next weakness is a little more profound, a little more subtle now. And connect this with your present inner condition, please, because you are still wandering around out in the desert, and you can connect what I'm going to say with a devil-possessed human being. He's in dreadful pain, horrible pain, frantic, looking around, looking for some way to get rid of it. He never will. He has chosen pain as his reward, and that's what he gets. But here's the point I want you to know. Pain, wherever you encounter it, is weakness. Okay? Won't you say that your pain is weakness? Doesn't suffering distract you from intelligence, from a clear mind? When you're in agony, aren't you just shaking apart? How can a person shaking apart do things right and clear? Not at all. You must know, therefore, that any human being whose behavior is predictable and wants to take you, you must know that he is in horrible suffering. How is that good for you to know that? When you know that, you can never again be bluffed and think that he's offering you leadership, love, guidance, or whatever, because you see beyond his trickery, his disguises, which we already discussed, and you can know absolutely that that man, that woman, that so-called leader is in great agony, which means he has nothing to give you but what he is, which is agony. The insight into that, absolutely knowing it, destroys forever the power, the false power of anyone to ever deceive you and lead you astray again. You therefore must start to study everyone, because everyone is in that state. The little sarcastic remarks, the little trickeries they play, the little hints of wanting a favor from you. They want anything they can get. What do you have to offer them? That's what they're going to go after. And if they don't know what they can get from you, they'll probe until they can find out. They're always probing your weak spots. They'll carry off anything they can get from you. So, knowing that when you are worried, anxious, frantic, and frustrated, you can see that you have no strength. You have no intelligence. Transfer it to others. Now that you know it in yourself, you can know it to everyone you meet. And I want to emphasize, I'm talking about everyone out there who's not here in this class studying the truth. It is true of everyone. Knowing that when you are worried, you have no stability, nothing intelligent to guide you, you know that's the way he is. How can you ever again follow, idolize, desire anyone? Anyone. You may want to buy their goods down at the market. We're not talking about that. How can you ever again slip into idolization in the area of romance, for example? How can you ever idolize anyone? Ladies, I'm going to tell you right now, because you don't seem to get it. And if this ever happens to you again, I want you to remember what I told you. All he wants to do is to get you into bed. Oh, if you can borrow money from you, that's a little extra. If he can use you to blab about his big career that's going upward, and he's going to take you along with him, he's not going to take you along with him. He's not going anywhere himself, probably. And if he did get it, goodbye to you. Men, should we include the men too? See, you men, you also set up the Moonlight and Roses picture in your mind and think it's going to work out that way. You don't know that your main objective is to get her into bed. And once that is accomplished after a few times, you wonder what on earth you're going to do with her. You men know that. I know it. You don't know what to do with her after you've had sex with her, do you? How did we get onto that subject? Knowing full well that this is a desperate world, and desperation is always evil. Desperation is evil. Well, isn't it? A desperate car running down the street out of control, isn't that evil? Doesn't it bump into everything it can and hurt other people? Know that all human beings who do not want the light are rushing down the road in darkness, and they'll bump into you if they can because they don't care. Having lost interest in their own life, they don't care about your life. The subtlety, the slyness of lost human beings, the subtlety of human monsters is incredible. They will do anything to distract you. They will do anything to keep you thinking about yourself, to prevent you from thinking above yourself. That's what they're after. They want to keep you in this whirlpool of self-concern, self-worry, self-agitation. They want you to think about that, hopefully, so that you will fall so much in love with it that you will forget that there's a way to jump out of that whirlpool. And if they can keep you in it long enough, you will forget. Billions do. The devil senses that there is something besides the whirlpool. He doesn't want it, but he senses that it's there. The something beside the whirlpool is the bank on the side of the rushing river where the whirlpool is, where the bank, where the ground is very solid, and you can go from that bank to anywhere else you want in the world. They know that. But how do they do it? When I tell you how they do it, there will be something in you that will respond to it. Again, to start off, there's nothing too vicious for a monstrous human being to plant in your mind. Their purpose is to plant evil seeds, hoping that at least some of them will grow up into weeds that will choke you. You listen to me and be aware of how what I'm going to describe to you in some detail happened to you just today already. And realize it's been happening to you all your life. A monstrous person, in order to get you preoccupied with yourself, works constantly on the subject of personal shame, of self-disgrace. If other ways don't work, they will descend to the lower parts of hell to get their instructions for wrecking your opportunity to become whole and spiritual. Examples. Reminding you that you are old and unpretty physically. Reminding you by comparison that you're not young and good looking like you might have been once, or like that other person in the room. They will instantly try to keep you, see, the purpose of this sly slander is to keep you thinking emotionally about yourself, and to so frighten you that that fear is so dominating you're not able to break out of it, and you close your eyes like that. to keep you there. If that doesn't work, they go on to the next one. Your past sexual indiscretions, for example, foolish things that you did in your sexual life, your romance life. And when I said that, you all responded in one way or another. I know you did, because sex is such a permanent, common, everyday thing in the lives of all human beings. They will put thoughts about sexual disgrace, what foolish, sick, very sick things you might have done sexually. Now, understand, human devils, whether they're in you or in another person, will plant these thoughts for the purpose of hoping that they'll grow until you are indeed choked, and that's all you ever have. So please don't give attention to what they say, but why they are saying it, why they're doing it. Harmful voices, right? If they can get you feeling ashamed, then that shame is going to be the flood by which will cut off even your wish to find something above the flood, because the devil knows that most human beings can be tempted to stay in shame as a permanent identity. It works. You know, in your past days, after you had this disgraceful experience in sex and romance, you know that you were taken over by it for a long time. And even if you think of it now, it might give you a little jolt. And every single one of you are doing it, whether you are aware of it or not, because the connection is there. Your knowledge now of how low, how vicious, how completely conscienceless dark voices are, your knowledge is your first step to stopping them from tempting, entering, and possessing. See, your exorcism and self-healing is well underway if you remember what you were told. This means you're exposing how they work. And when you expose how they work completely, they know they won't have a chance with you, and they'll go off to someone else. They always must try to find a human body to work through, to work into, to inhabit for as long as they can. And they live forever in most people, all the life long. Ooh, what a campaign we're on to stop them right now. So at the point of temptation, remember, you know they'd be tempted where you have something wrong in you, not where you have something good. And remember, temptation is temptation only, and it can be stopped right there. That is the first suggestion. The devil thought comes, the devil person suggests to you, brings up your past. Ever have any evil person bring up your past? That was the reason they were doing it. They want to shame you so that they can share in the disgrace of them saying that. All right. At the moment the temptation comes, you must remember, you must practice and do it over and over and over and over again. You must remember that now is new. That's it. That's the counterattack. That's the consciousness. That's the spiritual reply. Now is new. The devil can't stand that thought. You say it and he'll fall down, then he'll get up again. You say it again, he'll fall down. You keep saying it, he'll run away. What does that mean, now is new? It means you know in your spirit that you really, honestly, truly, right now, you are not that person who did that foolish thing. That man tempted you and you went along with him. You thought he cared for you, he loved you, he was just exploiting you. He didn't care for you, he just wanted sex. Ladies, please wake up. Now is new means exactly what it says. And we're going to have a practical experiment in that right now. The time to chase away the devil is always right now. Remember the phrase, now is new. Now you've got it in your mind. That's a good start. It's an intellectual concept to you that now is new. And I want you now to wish, if you want to call it a prayer, that's fine. I want you right now to want to know right within yourself, right at this moment that we are here in this hall, this pure place. I want you to know spiritually that now is new. Do it right now, as best you can. That's fine. What you did was drop the clock and the calendar. As best you could understand what was said to you, you dropped it for just a split second. But that split second, speaking time-wise, is enough to let a little bit of the light in, so that it is the light that you have admitted that tells you that you know from that the accusation that Satan made that you were a wicked, evil person because of those past evils that you did, whether it was sex, whether it was getting drunk, whatever. That little bit of light is the new you. And in that light, the dark suggestion, the evil temptation must stop. There is no way darkness out there can enter the circle of light. It's impossible. Darkness always stops where it must stop and where light begins. Think of a big campfire out in the dark woods. Everything in that campfire is clear, illuminated. People can see where they're going. There's only that light there. Darkness is out there, and it can't come in. This must be practiced over and over again until the spiritual feeling is added to it. This is what is known as daily, hourly, minutely exorcism and self-healing. When the thought comes first, now is new, the spiritual feeling is added to that, and then anytime the temptation comes to you, first of all, you will recognize it. Now, I want to tell you a severe problem. Your greatest problem in doing and knowing that now is new is that you don't recognize that thought, that slander thought, when it tries to enter you. The sentry is not nearly awake enough. You don't see it, so that it slips by and goes down into time memory, and it is real fast. You girls, you see a man who looks like your ex-boyfriend of 10 years ago with whom you had a horrible affair. You see a man that looks like him, just pass him on the street 1 second, and that 1 second, the devil, who is very alert, by the way, sneaks down and gets that into your mind, goes to your emotions, and you were stabbed by pain without even knowing it. And then you forgot about it and went on into the cafe or went home or whatever you did. This happens 100,000 times over a period of just 1 year. And all the time you're being pained by it because you were not alert, because you were not using this information to learn from, to grow with. How badly do you want to be rescued? That's the whole question, isn't it? Oh, I tell you, how can you do anything anymore? Any of you students of this class, how can you do anything anymore but the first thing you wake up in the morning is to find out how much more of these truths you can apply to your life? You watch yourself walk out of the house. You without being given an instruction, you feel your hand on the car door. You go through the traffic and you watch your petty irritations at the traffic, at the light changing and all that. All day long. And one thing you'll notice, and this is a marvelous place to be, you notice how often you go to sleep. How many of you have done that? All the time. You've determined that you're going to walk consciously from your house to the car, and what happens after 3 steps? Yeah. You see a little bird, some birds are feeding on crumbs in front of you. The birds fly away and you look at the birds. Forget the birds. See? Stay awake in spite of everything physical. You'll notice it. You can notice the birds. You can see them without being carried away on their wings. And this is what you want, because you're so afraid that if you do see, if the devil does plant a thought, you won't know what to do with it. Then you'll be ashamed all over again, and that shame goes counter to your phony self-images of being good, and now you're totally trapped in madness. If you don't have images of being good, then when bad images come in, they can't hurt you because there's no opposite involved. You have to know, in addition to the fact that now is new, because now is new, that nowness and that newness is the only goodness there is and the only good identity, sense of self that you need to have. Now, you won't want to be distracted anymore because you don't want to go back to who you were. You don't want to enjoy the shame and disgrace of that sex experience anymore. You will remember it with pure memory. It happened in pure memory. But you're not going to enliven it. You're not going to recreate it again in order to feel shame so that you can say, at least I'm a shamed human being and I've learned from it. You never learn from an experience which is still hounding you. You can only learn from experience when it is off into pure memory and not grabbing you emotionally. Here's a clue for you and for your behavior with other people. Behavior with yourself and with other people. If you do it once, you'll do it again. If you make a mistake once, you'll make that mistake again, unless you remember, and write this down as the grand conclusion, unless you remember that now is new. Why should you remember that now is new? Because that's the fact. That's the living fact. That's the light. That's the exorcism. That is what you need, not just to think about, but to know. And every time anyone or anything tries to bring you away from that, you say to yourself, it's a beginning effort is fine, now is new. And then put your whole day into knowing that from yourself, from your new self, which is the Spirit of truth. Now is new. Look at the average man, and you're looking at a scared little boy. Look at the average woman, and you're looking at a shy, nervous, worried little girl. That's the whole world as it actually is. Now, let me tell you the real reason why you were afraid, why you were that little boy grown up, that little girl grown up physically. Let me tell you the real reason why you're afraid. You're anxious and worried, concerned, nervous, because you don't know what's happening to you. You feel that a force, an energy is acting upon you, which it is, but you don't know what it is doing to you. You don't understand the whirling back and forth and up and down, going places out in the world, meeting people, leaving them, going to work, not finding much happiness there, going to work somewhere else. Things are happening to you, but you don't know the how or why. That is why you're afraid. And you feel completely helpless, don't you? Feeling pushed around, you don't know what to do about it. You don't know where to find control. You don't know how to find strength and wisdom to understand all this pushing around. There's no way you can put yourself in charge of all the movements that come to you and all the sorrows and pains that go with it. You do not understand what is happening to you here in this life. I'm going to explain to you what is happening to you. And with this explanation, you will know, you will see clearly. And with that clearness of inner sight, there will be no more anxiety, no more worry. You won't be a little boy anymore. You'll be a big man, a big, strong, mature man. You won't be a scared little girl anymore. You'll understand. You'll be mature. And then you will never be pushed around again by anything. Now, it is very vital for you to accept the description I have just given to you, accept it as being a quite accurate description of your life. If you will do that, you can go along with me for the rest of the talk, and you can begin to understand why you are pushed around and make a whole correction so that you're not pushed around anymore but are in total control. But if you are living from beliefs, by the way you are, if you're living from beliefs that you're a controller of your life, you won't be able to hear what I'm talking about. Therefore, there won't be self-healing. There won't be a pushing out of all the dark forces that now control you and push you around. You must therefore be very honest at the very start and know that your day, your life, your ways have been accurately described. Now stay with that. That is good to know your actual state and not push it away yourself and pretend that you haven't been described. I know that I have described you, all of you. Can't you be honest and say that's true? You are indeed looking at a scared little boy, a shy, bashful little girl who wonders if she's going to get hurt by the next man who comes along. And you're always hurt by, ladies, you're always hurt by men who are not real men. And that's what the world consists of, unreal men, and that's what we're talking about. When you become real, you will know unreality in a human being when you see it, and in a social situation when it comes up to you, and that renders it harmless. You will not be knocked around. You will not be pushed in places where you don't want to go. You are now, aren't you? Internally, externally, they both match. They both go together. You're always finding yourself in places where there's a great, deep wish that you didn't have to be there, aren't you? But you don't know how to get out. You were pushed there by allowing yourself to be pushed there, and that is the sorrow of everyone's life. I'm going to tell you the single most important fact that a human being, a little boy, a little girl, must know in order to be in charge of your life, which is quite possible, I assure you. There's no way to overestimate the importance of what you're going to hear. And I want you to go over it and over it once you've heard what it is, so that it becomes clear to you and it will finally become the answer to everything that now hurts you so badly. And can you admit, let's try a little deliberate sincerity. Can you admit that behind all your fake fronts that you are afraid and that you hurt a lot and that you don't know where to look for help and that you kid yourself and say, well, tomorrow I'll find something different? You won't. You won't unless you listen with complete attention and interest to what you're going to hear next. I'm going to tell you the real reason you are always worried, while you always feel alienated from yourself, while you are pushed around by the winds of psychological forces, dark forces. The first thing I want you to understand is that, this is how simple this is to tell you. Fear is bad. Now, put some logic into this. You are afraid. This anxiety you have is bad. My question to you, all of you, is, since fear is a bad thing, it's torment, isn't fear tormented? All right. Why have you endured it, put up with it, agreed to it up to your present age? Why? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. For one thing, maybe you never heard the way out before. You're going to hear it, and you are hearing it now, but oh, we've got a lot of good things ahead of us. No one ever told you. You never heard it. You never went to a place before where you were told the truth how to open the gate and get out of yourself. It's yourself that you're concerned with. Get out of your own problems. You've never heard it before. You're going to hear it now. And also, there's so much in you that is tied to fear. You like the familiarity of it. You take it as a certain guidance. When you don't know what else to do, you'll fall into a worry or an anxiety or a trembling of some kind. And you take that as the answer. A situation and the exterior world comes along, and you take trembling as an answer. Now, you know that's not intelligent. Why? How can it be intelligent to start shaking when confronted by a crisis? But you don't understand that you are so deeply under these dark forces, these exterior and interior influences. You don't understand how much they've taken you over and have made your behavior the often silly behavior that it is. By understanding fear, the basis of it, you will finally understand that you were taken over by something that had no business being in your life. And you will understand that the great troublemaker that anxiety and tension causes. Doesn't anxiety cause you to do impulsive and foolish things? Isn't it involved in foolish attitudes? Isn't there fear involved in the heartaches of this society you live in? All the fighting among human beings and the slandering of hate and hating of each other. Don't you know that fear is involved in that? And in crime and in war? Aren't you already eager to get rid of all forms of tension and stress and anxiety? Now listen carefully. And if you see, which it is possible for you to do right during this talk, if you see it, you will want nothing more to do with what has been hurting you. You won't want to be the willing victim anymore, which you have been, the willing victim of dark forces that come along and attack you all day long and all night long. You will no longer be willing to be a victim, and that is a marvelous start in itself, where your psychological, your spiritual no is growing in power and in intensity, where it begins to speak for you. You see, you're now speaking with your own weakness. You're talking from that, and what effect does that have? How can you believe that a fearful no, which you have now, has any strength? You will learn how to have a pure, spiritual, wholesome no to everything that you have now yielded to, and instead of you yielding to it, it will yield to you. You will see it walk away. What does that mean in practical terms? That means you're not going to worry anymore over what you used to consent to worry to, because you've seen the folly of it. And now I'm going to come to the fundamental fact that I mentioned earlier, the single most important thing you must know about yourself, and you'll learn it about other people as you learn about yourself, in order to cease being a victim of yourself and of life, and to begin to be wholesome, begin happy, to be really happy. You want to be happy? I'm going to tell you how right now. You have to receive the following information. So receive it now. You are afraid. Now, what is your great, overwhelming, fundamental fear? You fear that you are not your imaginary identity. That's it. That's it. You fear that you are not the delusory self that you thought you were. And you fear that this invented self may someday be seen through. Aren't you afraid of being seen through? Of course you are. That's one of your greatest terrors. Someone's going to catch you out of a role that you play, see through you, and you're going to be shocked and ashamed. You fear that your false nature, your unnatural nature, you fear that it is not real, and it isn't. It is not real. but you fear that you will see through it, and then you're afraid, you'll be afraid that you won't know who you are. But please, you don't know who you are now. That's why you're afraid, because you have an artificial personality which expresses itself in all these horrible, malicious ways. Your artificial personality does artificial acts, gets artificial results, and there's the pain and there is the heartache. Now you see how we've come right back to an original point? You don't know what's happening to you, because this invented personality built upon all your past experiences and pains and pleasures, this artificial personality has no intelligence. It can't see. It can't see anything that is happening to you. It's taken you over and you can't see it, and therefore it controls you and takes you, in horrible places, both inwardly and outwardly, getting in trouble all the time. You know that falling into trouble is a habit with you, don't you? All right. Now, you have been living from who you are not, and you're terrorized that something may take away your artificial self, and then you will feel that you will be empty, lost, and wandering. The best way to illustrate it is with the idea of amnesia. You know what amnesia is, don't you? You've seen stories of it. You've heard of a man who was walking down the street and he hit his head in some way, or he got a great shock over some sight he saw, and he wanted to block out what he'd seen, so he went to amnesia. In other words, he forgot who he was. Here he was, a middle-aged man maybe, living in a middle-class neighborhood with a wife and 2 children, and the shocking event happened to him and he forgot who he was. There are hundreds, thousands of cases actually like that. And so, forgetting who he was, instead of coming home at night, he got on a bus and went somewhere, then got on another bus wandering around, not knowing that he had forgotten who he really was. Now, see how his anxiety and tension, well, this is a parallel, his tension set in because he would get on the bus to go to the opposite side of town that night where he lived, and went way out, and all the time, and listen to this please, because it's so characteristic of spiritual amnesia. The bus took him way to the opposite side of town, and he got off at a strange street 25 miles away from his home, and he got off and he started walking down the street not knowing where he was going. You don't know where you're going. You didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. You didn't know his name. His identification had been lost in some way. His anxiety is this. He is wandering around, not knowing what to do with himself, where to go, and listen carefully to what I'm going to say next. All the time he is walking around, not knowing where to go, and the sun is going down. Let that sink in. You see, if you were on the spiritual path, if you get rid of your spiritual amnesia, you would have a sensing of the direction of home. And each new idea, spiritual principle that you absorb would steady your walk so that you would feel and know that you were heading in the right direction to home, away from your wandering around way out there. And you would know that it's getting later in the day, but you would also know that you're heading home and you could get home before dark. Not the way you are now. You don't have that yet. This is why you get off that bus at the end of the bus line, way out to the city limits out there, and where the dark woods begin, and you get off and you sense and see that sun going down, and you don't know where you're going to spend the night. You don't know what to do. Carry on with our illustration of the man who's in what you call actual amnesia. He goes out and he finds a place, he sleeps in the woods or something, he gets up the next day, and he wanders from here to there, all the time being compelled by something, some power that has taken him over he knows nothing about, so that he has no control at all. Well, some cases they do come to themselves and they finally get back home. But we're talking about spiritual amnesia now. You're under it. You don't know who you are, and the reason you don't know who you really are is because you insist on remaining in spiritual amnesia instead of waking yourself up with the knowledge you can and are being given. Everything you've heard can be a part of your inner wish and desire and energy to shake your head and look around and see that you're in the wrong place. And one of the places where you can start to work on right now is the fact that you're in the wrong place, called anxiety, called worry, called nervousness. That's a good word. How many of you are nervous? You know that's your whole life. And look, please, there's no way you can bluff and fake it. Just say to yourself right now, while I'm talking to you, all of you, this would be a way to get help into you right at this very minute. Just simply admit, I am nervous. And don't say, I'm nervous because this is a horrible world. See, now you've diluted it, you've weakened it. Say, I am nervous, so that you can go on from there and understand what we're talking about, and say, I'm nervous because I'm living in the wrong place internally. And I'm wandering around there. I get on the internal bus and go 20 miles. I get on an airplane and go 5,000 miles. And all the time I do indeed have this apprehension that I'm not in the right place. Now, I'll ask you, how can you ever say that living as you now are internally is a right place? Can you settle it once and for all right now that it is bad for you to argue with truth when it tries to help you? Don't you know that's bad? Can you do that right now? You see, you have a chance to work right now. You're in a place where the whole atmosphere of this hall, the atmosphere, the power in this hall is on your side. You have a special opportunity here. There really is a truly different, healthy, wholesome, something in the air, atmosphere, call it what you want. It is on your side now. Take advantage of it right now by yielding fully, as fearful as you are to do so. Don't you know that fear is afraid of real courage? See? If you could just put yourself on the right side, that will do the work for you. All right. I've told you that your chief fear is that what you were calling yourself may turn out to be untrue after all. Face it right now that it is untrue after all. Now, never mind, listen carefully, never mind who you will be when you have the spiritual courage to drop your amnesia. Never mind asking yourself, who will you be when you willingly and voluntarily dissolve the false self, the unnatural self. I direct you to have no concern for tomorrow. I direct you to have no anxiety over who you will be tomorrow if you simply relax right now and drop all your conditioned ideas, all your false beliefs, listen to this one. This is a good one. Don't be concerned over dropping your fighting spirit. See, all fighting includes fear. If you were to stop fighting, you couldn't be afraid. And when you are no longer afraid, you are no longer your spurious wrong nature, but you are someone else. Now, I want to tell you what you just asked me. I can read your minds. I know what you're thinking while I'm talking to you. You said, first of all, I said, drop your artificial nature and have no concern for who you will be tomorrow. I said, drop that. You didn't. You said, but please, couldn't you give me a hint of who I'll be? Couldn't you suggest it in some way so that I will have assurance that I'll have someone to be tomorrow? No, absolutely not. I am not going to fall for that. I see it so clearly, and I am not going to permit you to fall for it. Look, one little bit of error, 1 ounce of error can spoil 10 tons of truth if you let it in there and try to get it all mixed up with it. We go all the way, 100%, and here's what I mean by that. You must be so inwardly relaxed, so agreeable to letting truth, God, take over and do what God wants, so much that you no longer have any reservations at all about it. Not asking, please, could you give me assurance that I'll be all right? Well, what do you think God is? Isn't God completely spiritual, completely true, completely reliable, completely compassionate and loving? See, you don't really trust God. But all right, I understand that for now. I'm telling you to do something that will put you in a position where you have nothing but the spiritual life, where it controls everything, where there's no time thinking toward tomorrow or next week or the next 50 or the next. There's no concern, please listen, there's no concern in you at all over the next 1,000 years, because you'll have understood that eternity is now, right now, and therefore that's the reason you don't have to be worried over tomorrow or 10 years or 5,000 years from now. What you have to do is let go, willingly, voluntarily, do it 50 times a day if necessary. Let go of the fearful self, which is an imposter. And all the malicious forces, evil spirits, all the malicious forces use your fearful self to live in and from. And you're not conscious yet that you have been living with a faker who wants you to stay out at the end of that bus line, out at the end of the town, when it's getting darker and darker out there. It wants you to remain afraid. Malicious forces want you to remain in a trembling state, listen to me, because that is what they are. They want you to be with them. Because if you decide you're not going to live with them anymore, they're not going to have anyone to torment. Who do you think is giving you all these terrible nights that you have and days? Who do you think is giving it to you? Someone, something, malicious forces that you've consented to, that you now think, heaven help us all, you think they are good for you. You think that they're on your side, that they're helpful, that they're necessary. Come on, break out, right now, break out. You can do it. Don't go along with them anymore. See so clearly that that very sight is your 100% rebellion against their possession of your life. When they don't possess your life, when wrong attitudes, for example, wrong attitudes possess your life, don't they? Hurtful attitudes, hurtful convictions. When they don't possess your life, something else will. Now, this is very encouraging for you to know that if you completely, altogether, abandon who you now are with no reservations, give it up completely, that allows a complete infilling of yourself by the Spirit of light. That becomes your life. That becomes your direction. And when you know where you're going, you can't be afraid. In fact, the fear being all gone, your whole day is filled with a real pleasure in which you say over and over to yourself, and this is a very spiritual statement, you've left the bus line at the end of the city, the dark woods, and you're starting to come back home because you've recovered from your spiritual amnesia. And all the way home, you are thinking joyous thoughts, pleasant thoughts. Your emotions are beginning to join them. You're glad, you're rightly excited. And every step you get closer to your real nature, to your real home, every step you take, you get more excited. Do you know that a truly spiritual human being is the most excited person on earth? Why? Oh, he knows real gold when he sees it, because he found out what counterfeit gold was. Oh, is he excited that he's going to get more for himself, which God has promised to give him as much as he can take, as much as he wants. How much, therefore, of true spiritual riches do you want? If you want a lot, you can have a lot. Start right now to want more. Just want more. That's right. That's a prayer. That's a wish. Want more of it and you will have it. And then you will know who you are. And you will live from who you are. And you will live that way, not for 50 years, not for 1,000, but for eternity. That is your new life. That is your true life. And that is what you can now have. Truth is exceedingly close, comforting, and strong. Now, isn't that a delightful thought to think about? Since truth is close and strong, why are you weak? See, truth says something to you. It says, I want you to know that when you tremble, I don't tremble. And if you were to remember that, if you would bring yourself back to where you should be internally, you would be right with truth, and it would be your comfort, and you need nothing else on earth. Now you need a lot of things, a lot of extras, don't you? You've got them. Oh, the places you go and the things you think and the things you grab after in order to feel safe and secure. Since they haven't worked, drop them and stay close to even the little bit of reality that you've collected. Stay close to that. And if you feel afraid, that means you have wandered off. Come back. And I'll show you how to do that a little later in the talk. This talk is about self-healing. It's for those of you who are tired of bumping into life and falling down and crying. It's for those of you who feel a strange, haunting, an alien force that is there, but you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to handle it. You're worried over something and you don't know what to do about it, and so you worry over it. And you sense that worry is wrong, but it's the only thing you have, and that's what you go after. You must understand that the process of exorcism, of spiritual healing, comes by you willingly letting yourself be melted down from your present hardened state. You are hardened, whether you say it or not, know it or not, realize it or not. And it is out of that hardness that comes all the problems that you have. It's no fun being a human block of ice that's cold, and it is hard. And there's nothing in it real for you. So why don't you just let the warmth of truth melt you down a little bit tonight? How about a little bit tonight? Will you do that? Will you yield just a little bit? And you can actually feel the going away of the hardness, because you feel the vanishing a little bit of the pain that always goes with a hard mind and a hard spirit. You know what I'm talking about when I say hard. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Psychological hardness, which you're afraid to melt yourself down. And you're afraid to be what you are. You're caught, you're trapped by yourself, aren't you? That's what we're going to talk about. First of all, that there is a severe problem, the problem being your present condition. And then we're going to talk about how you can no longer be in this condition, no longer be you, but every day, through your own efforts, melt down just a little bit more so that you're fluid, flexible, so that nothing can hit you. You see, you can hit a block of ice, can't you? Try hitting water sometime. It just splashes. We'll melt down. You can melt down. And to do that, we're going to do something very interesting. This will be spiritual entertainment at the same time that it's very edifying. We're going to talk about symbolism that human beings have used over thousands of years in an attempt to explain evil, haunting spirits, anything that is against humanity. And the symbolism that people have chosen to use to try to understand evil and dark forces is the creation of monsters of various kinds. You've seen monster movies, and you've heard of Dracula and Frankenstein and Wolfman and a few others, very assorted and weird types of half-human, not quite human. These are symbolic of evil. And human beings act toward these monsters inwardly as they do outwardly when you see them in a movie or read about them in a book. First of all, they're very mysterious, aren't they? And secondly, they're not quite what they seem. You're not quite sure what they're all about. You think it might be friendly, but it isn't. Turns out to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of thing. And so you are afraid of the monsters, which is the symbolism for something inside. Aren't you afraid inwardly of something you don't understand? Something that doesn't Dracula seem to have a strange power? Doesn't all these other monsters that you've seen, 1,000 varieties, aren't they able to scare you? Do you know what we're going to do here right now? We are going to learn that we can go up to any one of them. We'll get to the inner part in a minute, but just stick to this symbolism outwardly for a minute. The monsters with footsteps walking down the hall and you're in bed, and the strange noises and the fierce looks and the sudden appearances. You can learn, and you can learn right now in the period of this talk. You can learn that if you are close to truth, within truth, that those monsters inside you and outside you and other people cannot scare you at all anymore, because you know how to unmask them. You yourself, as people do when watching a horror movie, you yourself have attributed power, evil, the force to these creatures, and you feel it in yourself, and that's what you like. People like to be afraid. That's another reason why monster movies are so popular. You're sitting in the safety of the theater or your home, and yet you're feeling fear, but knowing that you're actually physically safe. Now, the unmasking of everything that is monstrous out there can be applied to the unmasking inside. But just a brief comment, and let's stay on the outside monsters just for now. Oh, how brave you can be. Here's the haunted house with a dozen different monsters inside there. Some of them vague shapes, some of them ghost-like. And you go into them and you walk right up to them and flip up the mask and you see nothing. When you flip up the mask, you'll see nothing there, and they will collapse right in front of you. They'll disappear. I tell you, they'll disappear because you created that inner terror yourself in the first place. And when you understand your nature, when you see through yourself, when you see how imagination combined with emotion has created those fears and those delusions in the first place, when you see through it, that's symbolic of you lifting the mask, taking it off, and they vanish into nothingness. It can happen. It does happen. It will happen to you. And it's about time you went about your business methodically, systematically, and very diligently every day to catch one monster. Now, we're going to be more specific. Oh, do we have a terror inside that we can begin to walk up to now boldly, confidently, and take the mask off and watch it collapse? And all of you need this desperately, because now we're going to go inward. We've talked about the exterior symbolism. Now we're going to see what it relates to inside our own system. The monster we're going to talk about, and which is now very much with you and scaring you, is the monster of being rejected, unwanted, deserted. Now let's get a little detail on that. You will either anticipate being rejected, which you do all the time, or you actually have been, one of the two. Either fearing that you're going to be pushed away by someone, either fearing it or it has actually happened to you. Oh, don't you know that as you are here in this room, unknown to yourself, that fiend, that monster, is still attacking you? Don't you remember that girlfriend? Gentlemen, don't you remember that girlfriend? Ladies, don't you remember that man? What was it, 5 years, 10 years ago? How many were there? Several, right? You vowed that this is the last time a man is going to break your heart, and it happened again, didn't it? All right. Think and make clear in your mind the fear, which is monstrous, terrible, and why do you put up with it? Think of the abiding fear you have every day of someone disapproving of you, not liking you anymore, rejecting you, saying, I don't want you around anymore, pushing you away. Summarize, use the word rejection, unwanted. You have suffered from attacks by that monster hundreds and hundreds of times, haven't you? You felt left out. Other people got something you didn't get. You didn't get the attention you thought you should have. And you wondered how all the other men and the other girls got all the attention and all the good things, and you didn't get anything. And here you're standing in the corner, and they're all out in the ballroom dancing and having a good time. And you can't figure out why you're not out there. I'll tell you why. You're not out there. You should get out there eventually, but the reason you're not out there now is because you don't want to be. You would rather huddle in the corner with your fear. There is great progress to be made, by the way, and being right in this world and working with it, going out on the dance floor. That means go ahead and engage in business if you want. Go ahead and be associated with people in other ways, socially or whatever. As your work requires it, go out there and use it as a schoolroom. All right. Okay, a little more specific. Let's see, ladies, if this connects with your experiences. The lady has a boyfriend or a husband, and after the moonlight and roses has worn off, he leaves her, and she's left without him, and she feels rejected, deserted, and the pain and the suffering and the loneliness is overwhelming. The shock shakes for weeks and months, doesn't it? And you don't know what to do with it. I tell you, that monster, that evil has taken her over wholly. She can't think clearly about anything. And you can see it in her face even a year afterward. Oh, and the heartache is there. Listen to me and never forget it. because I am going to show you right now how to unmask the monster of feeling unwanted, rejected, deserted. And if you get it, you must get it. You will never feel that way again. Impossible. You'll be free of it. All right, here we go. That weeping woman who cries in the night, she's not afraid of losing that man. She doesn't miss that man. Let me tell you what it's all about. She fears and suffers from the loss of her usual repetitious thoughts about the man and their relationship. That's it. That's it. She is suffering because her usual thoughts of him coming to her house at night and them enjoying each other, she is suffering because she knows at 8 o'clock when he usually arrives, he's not going to be there. Therefore, she cannot fall into easy, mechanical, pleasurable thought that he will be there and they'll have a good time that night. Now, I want to tell you, listen again, she doesn't miss him. She does not miss him. She misses the absence and the threat to her expectations of being able to escape herself by his company. She was using that man, and that man was using her too. They didn't have a spiritual relationship. They may have had one that was enjoyable on the physical, social level, on the sexual level. They might have had a good time there. But what is that to do with them using the situation to find themselves? They didn't. They just enjoyed each other's company. All right. So he wrote her a letter from another city and said, I won't be back again. Oh, the pain and the shock overwhelming like a flood on her. It's her own fault for feeling deserted. She's self-centered. She feels, oh, I thought I was important to him. He told me that he cared for me. He made me feel needed. He gave me pleasure. I could talk to him and tell him about my troubles down at the office, and he talked to me. Now, what am I going to do with myself at 8 o'clock every night? Are you making the connection that it's her own thoughts that's involved? The man has nothing whatever to do with her pain, not in reality. And she has to see this. Every woman who's ever had that experience should be in this room tonight. Are there women in this room tonight who've had that experience? Every one of you, right? If not with a man, then with some other type of situation. So she fears the ending of her habitual, preferred, pleasurable stream of thoughts starting at 8 o'clock. She knows that at 8, she won't be able to fall into the pleasure of opening the door, and he comes in with a little snack for them for the night, and smiles at her, and they kiss each other. She knows that she won't be able to do that starting on Monday night at 8 o'clock because he's not going to show up. And oh, is she in sorrow. And she sobs and wanders around the house not knowing what to do, because she is face to face with the fact that she does not know what to do with herself. She has lost her old familiar so-called friendly thoughts, the anticipation of it, the enjoyment of it. Now she has come face to face with her actual emptiness. And that emptiness was there before he came. And that emptiness was there before she ever met the man. But she used him to cover up instead of use the situation to work on herself to find herself. That's what it's all about. That's what caused the pain. And she looks at herself and she says, but now what should I do? I can't do what I usually do. The whole habit system is shattered, so what should I do? And the monster called loneliness and desertion, who is right there, whispers the answer. And the answer that that monster whispers is, Miss, I'll tell you what to do. Break down, cry, fall apart, get on the phone and tell your troubles to someone. Try to get their sympathy. He tells her exactly what to do, and because she doesn't know that she's been taken over by a malicious force, she follows that advice, and she sobs, and she wrecks herself, and she has never found anything higher than her own crying mind. What can she do? What can she do about it? She can understand everything I just talked about. If she understood that, she would be free. Look, do you understand? If she was an adult woman or an adult man, the situation could be reversed. She might have given him a phone call and said, I don't want you anymore. Now he goes through the same thing. If anyone in that state could realize what we're talking about, all experiences like that would have no pain value at all. You can have a relationship with a man. You can be involved with a woman if that's what you want. And I hope you're very wise before you get involved in the first place. But listen, if you're awake when you go into that relationship, there's no way that could ever happen. No way at all. Because you went into it wrongly. If you went into it wrongly without being awake, you went into it in order to get a sense of security. You wanted to feel loved. And the slightest hint that he might not come over for one night sends you into a panic. Has he already grown tired of me? Is he going to toss me aside? See? But if you were awake, you would be superior to every circumstance and every human personality on earth. So if by chance the man should say, I don't want to see you anymore, the woman being awake would say, all right. That's what, look, when you were free, you don't care how they behave towards you. There's no way they can hurt you. There's no way they can flatter you. There's no way when you are awake, when you're living from truth, there's no way any other human being can give you anything good or bad. You're above it. Now that woman has a lot of work to do, and the man too, if it's in his case of being lonely, isn't it? Let me go over it just a little bit more. If you're in a romantic situation, social situation, or friendship with your parents, with anyone, you have a certain set of beliefs, ideas, notions that other person is valuable to you because he or she gives you something to think about, something to do with them tomorrow, the pleasant memories and all that. Then you lose that person through any means at all. If you are awake, there will be no sense of loss because you didn't falsely invest something in that relationship in the first place. You see, a free spirit, a true mind, never would dream of putting itself at the mercy of anyone's disappearance or anyone's flattery. It doesn't operate that way at all. It operates above everything. So, if you have a social relationship, you can go have that. And you'll never, ever be afraid of anyone leaving you. It has no meaning to you because having found your true nature, your new nature, there is no one there to be deserted. Now, if there's no one there to be deserted, to be left out, if there's no one there, then how can there be pain there? Doesn't there have to be an entity there to feel reject? And when there is someone there, a false personality, a false nature, then by the very fact that it is there means that it will automatically follow its own mechanical reactions, and you'll cry. Oh, how about some alternatives to crying? Oh, maybe you get furious. Maybe you get hateful. All the same false self expressing itself in order to pretend that it does know what to do with itself. When you sob, when you strike out at anyone, I want you to know that is an act. It is a deliberately contrived act and activity by which you have followed the orders of a dark force to pretend that you're still okay, that you don't mind at all, and you can't believe yourself, can you? You know the trouble with trying to believe a lie? You can't believe it. All right? Try to believe a lie, you can't believe it at all because it's so obvious to you inside. Whatever you do, study, look at, understand what moves you make when you feel rejected, whether in a little tiny way, a little word, or a great big way. I order you, a nice spiritual order to you, to see through the series of tricks you play in order to convince yourself that you're still secure. That woman, her very crying was her resource, her move to try to convince herself that she was she. On Sunday night, she was loved. The man came over and even brought her a little gift, a little present, which she liked. And they had a good time Sunday night. And then the phone call came, and he said, I won't be over Monday night or any other night. Immediately, her nervous, false parts immediately gave her instructions as to what to do about it. And she followed the instructions of this evil force, and it is very evil, to try to preserve her identity as follows. On Sunday night, this is the woman talking. On Sunday night, I was held in his arms. On Sunday night, I was loved. On Sunday night, I was comforted. On Sunday night, I had a companion, I had a lover, I had a friend. On Monday night, I don't have that. But I have something else. My identity on Sunday night was a woman who was loved. Then the phone call came. What am I going to do? I know what to do to keep myself going, to keep myself alive. I know what to do. I will become a woman who was rejected, who was now unwanted, and I will prove that I am that rejected woman by crying, by shrieking, by breaking down, by throwing myself on the bed. And thereby, I will prove that I have an individual, definite, distinct identity after all. I was a loved woman on Sunday. On Monday, I was a rejected woman. But in either case, I know who I am, and they are both lies. She wasn't loved. She wasn't comforted on Sunday night. And she wasn't, in reality, that rejected, pushed aside, tossed aside, weeping, crying out woman on Monday night. You see, it's all a search for identity. Will you, therefore, study your experiences and see where you slip into any kind of identity so that you can call yourself something, so you think you can push away the emptiness. Listen to me. Don't feel loved on Sunday and rejected on Monday. They're both false identities. I want you to learn to love the emptiness of not knowing who you are. And if you do that completely, you will know who you are. And in that higher knowing, you will never look forward to pleasure from another person. You won't have to. You will have it with you all the time. And you won't break down and cry out in anger or in tears. You won't do anything on either side of the picture. Instead, you'll be a very poised, very wide awake, very wise human being who has risen above the awful, unnatural, disastrous reactions to life. Nothing, no one will ever be able to touch you or harm you. You will be absolutely free of everything out there because you have worked so very hard and so diligently to free yourself of everything wrong inside. That is the right life. That is why you are here on earth, to find that kind of a life, the real life.